Teague, and I'm the guy that owns Teague Enterprises. This is the overseas unit from the back. This is the hood from the back, and the flow out of the hood right above the smoking machine to catch the smoke that escapes the smoking machine. The smoking machine goes over and feeds into the mixing chamber. The mixing chamber then takes the smoke through this hose and feeds it into both chambers. The first one, chamber A, goes through an orifice meter, and the orifice meter is just a plate in there that constricts the flow and measures the pressure drop across there. You can see it on this mini helix gauge. This is calibrated to read flows in flows per minute. So the calibration of this machine was done at 0.4 inches of water. That corresponds to about 25 liters per minute. So the flow then continues on into the chamber. The chamber has two tubes in there with holes in them, and the smoke then goes into the chamber, moves across the chamber, and into the exhaust system over here. The exhaust is controlled by this valve, which controls the flow rate. In this position, the flow is completely on. In this position, the flow is completely off. So somewhere in the middle is where the flow equals 0.4. Okay, so we'll turn the fan on now, and you'll watch the gauges start to show something. Okay, with the flow completely on, you'll notice that the gauge is completely pegged out to the right. And when it's off, the flow will be, the gauge is 0. So you want to set it about 0.4 here. So it looks like it's about 0.4 now. So you may have to play around with it a little bit to get it to where it's the right flow rate. It's not real critical that it be exactly 4. It can vary a tenth of an inch or so. So it could be 0.35 to 0.45. Okay. So this is the blower that pulls all the smoke through there. And there's the negative pressures on this side, and the positive pressures where it comes out here. The hose then can be taken and put into a hood or outside or into the ventilation system. You also need a compressor. The compressed air is this is not included with in the system I sent you. But this needs something like this to provide 25 psi to the smoking machine. Okay, now we can turn the machine or system around. Teague, and I'm the guy that owns Teague Enterprises. This is the overseas unit from the back. This is the hood from the back, and the flow out of the hood right above the smoking machine to catch the smoke that escapes the smoking machine. The smoking machine goes over and feeds into the mixing chamber. The mixing chamber then takes the smoke through this hose and feeds it into both chambers. The first one, chamber A, goes through an orifice meter, and the orifice meter is just a plate in there that constricts the flow and measures the pressure drop across there. You can see it on this mini helix gauge. This is calibrated to read flows in flows per minute. So the calibration of this machine was done at 0.4 inches of water. That corresponds to about 25 liters per minute. So the flow then continues on into the chamber. The chamber has two tubes in there with holes in them, and the smoke then goes into the chamber, moves across the chamber, and into the exhaust system over here. The exhaust is controlled by this valve, which controls the flow rate. In this position, the flow is completely on. In this position, the flow is completely off. So somewhere in the middle is where the flow equals 0.4. Okay, so we'll turn the fan on now, and you'll watch the gauges start to show something. Okay, with the flow completely on, you'll notice that the gauge is completely pegged out to the right. And when it's off, the flow will be, the gauge is 0. So you want to set it about 0.4 here. So it looks like it's about 0.4 now. So you may have to play around with it a little bit to get it to where it's the right flow rate. It's not real critical that it be exactly 4. It's going to vary a tenth of an inch or so. So it could be 0.35 to 0.45. Okay. So this is the blower that pulls all the smoke through there. It has the negative pressures on this side and the positive pressures where it comes out here. The hose then can be taken and put into a hood or outside or into the ventilation system. You also need a compressor. The unit's turned around. You can see the top part is the hood unit. This is the mixing chamber, the smoking machine, and the hood, the exhaust. Okay, this is the chamber A and chamber B. This is the shelf that goes in there. These two things here are for checking the TSP. We'll go through that later. Okay, in order to turn it on, you need compressed air. So the compressed air goes in with a 1/4 inch line. These are push-to-fit connectors. So you'll push it in just a little bit, and then when you feel resistance, push it in a little bit more and it'll stop. In order to release it, you push the little ring around the outside, and then it comes out. Okay, now it's on. So to start up the machine, first you would turn on the flow. Or actually before that you can start loading it up first. So the cigarettes go in with the filter to the right, and it can be loaded in here. You can put up to 40 cigarettes in here. When you get up to a little more than 10, you have to start putting them up on the top. Okay, so load a few cigarettes in here. These are Kentucky Research cigarettes, the 3R4F. Okay. Then the next thing you need is some water in the ashtray. So we put water in this ashtray. This just has a little bit in it. For a full day's use, you might have to fill it halfway full. Sometimes it's easier to open this up and then put the ashtray in here. Okay, the smoking machine consists of the cigarettes and a loading mechanism called the magazine load. This is actuated by the pistons. This air piston loads the cigarettes in. The one in the back of here pushes this magazine load out, and the third one right here ejects the cigarettes. So the cigarettes start out in the magazine, and they get loaded in by this mechanism, and they fall into a chamber, get pushed back. Then the piston pushes the cigarette in through the hole, and it's held in there with some gasket on the edge of the hole. And then as the cigarette goes around, it comes to the top 12 o'clock position, and the lighter lights up. The lighter's a nichrome wire, that has current pass through it, and when the current passes through it, it heats up red hot and starts the cigarette burning. When the cigarette is burning, then at the end of the 4 seconds, it takes a 2-second puff. Now the 2-second puff is the Federal Trade Commission standard puff. It's 35 cc's for 2 seconds. In order to accomplish that, a puff pump is set up. You can just you can see it through the back here. This puff pump turns on for 2 seconds. It's set for around to pull air through the cigarette at about a liter a minute, which turns out to be 35 cc's. Okay, the cigarettes turn around and they puff for 9 times. After the 9th time, when they're ejected into the water and the cigarettes are extinguished, then the cigarette is automatically loaded again. The number of cigarettes that is burning at one time is set by the software when you turn it up. The software options are displayed when the machine is turned up, and we can go ahead and turn this up. You focus in on this part. Okay, I'm going to turn it on. When I turn it on, the wheel will start turning. When it stops, and you push the next switch here. The next switch stops the machine from starting automatically. And the first thing you'll see on here is the number of cigarettes. The number of cigarettes can be changed by doing up or down. So it's set on 9 cigarettes now. We'll turn it down to say 2 cigarettes. Okay, the buttons here are the next. It's the one you push to stop the wheel. That also cycles through the options you have. Enter is after you complete something, that stores it in the program. The down and up are what change the number that it's blinking. Escape then is after you're done making all the choices, then you push the escape button. So in order to change the number of cigarettes, if you want to push it up, then you push up and it goes 3, 4, down, okay, 5, 3, 2. Alright, we'll say if we wanted 2, then we press enter. Okay, the other things you can do on here are the index offset number. Now the index offset number is actually something you won't have to change unless you would change the wheel or some other thing, because it's actually the operator set and doesn't have to be messed with. Okay, the lighter direct current is the amount of current going through the lighter. You can turn this down. It should actually be around 35 all the time. If it's not, then your lighter's actually dirty or needs to be cleaned. So try to keep that at about 35. Okay, when that's set, again, you push the enter. The next thing that can be done is on time. Now on time is the amount of time that the cigarette machine will stay on and running, smoking cigarettes. This is set for 160 minutes. Okay, and the off time is when it stops. So if off time is 0, then the machine never stops. So for instance, if you wanted to turn the machine on for an hour, you would put the first on time at 60, and then maybe the off time at, say, 20 minutes or so, and then it would go on for an hour, stop 20 minutes, and then if you did nothing else, it would start up again after 20 minutes and start again, loading cigarettes and operating. Okay, then the next thing is pressure. This is something that is not on this machine. It's built into the software, but it actually shuts off a ventilation system remotely if the ventilation system of a building goes out by accident. Okay, now we're back to the number of cigarettes. Okay, so now we've chosen 2 and everything is set. So you want to Can you see the number and everything on there?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay, so now we're going to start up the machine when we push escape. So you want to stop and we'll back up. Alright, obviously before you started your experiment you would have to load the animals in there. So the animals are, the door comes off by opening these latches. And the door comes out. And notice there's a top on here. So that should be, put it in there, put it in, you know, so this is the top facing up. So this is the shelf, so the animals' cages can go in here or on the bottom. I think it will fit 3 standard mouse cages. So the cages can go right in there and there's no problem with them getting enough smoke. Because the smoke is such a small particle, it actually acts like a gas. So whatever's in the cages will be in the chamber. As far as these little holes go, this is coming in on this side through the tubes, and then it exits on this side here. These holes should be up. Okay, so we'll have to get a wrench and
Go.
Okay, so this tube is now shown in the proper orientation with the holes up and down. So the air would come in here and spread out here and mix in through here so that you get a good mixing throughout the chamber. Okay, when you got your animals in here, you put the door back on and you got it upside down. Stick it in here. And be careful about putting the door on as far as cutting the gasket. You cut the gaskets then, or get them dirty, and it won't seal very good. So you notice it's clicking every time I put these gaskets on there. After these can be adjusted by taking and loosening one of them and tightening the other so that the stopper can go up and down on here. Okay. So, all right, now we're almost ready to go. We need to turn on we've got the pressure on, and so we need to turn on the pressure to it. And we have 25 psi here located on the gauge. And we turn on the fan. Alright, so now we've got flow. I'll check and see if the flow is proper. Okay, we've got 0.4 on there, corresponding to 25 liters per minute going through the chambers. Alright, so we're ready to start up the machine. So we can press escape, and things will start to happen here. First thing that happens is the puff pump turns on. Rotate in position to be able to take the first cigarette. So we're at 2 cigarettes, so I'll load 2 cigarettes in here. So we load the cigarette, pushes it in, it moves up to the 12 o'clock position, the lighter turns on, and the cigarette lights. Now the lighter can be changed as far as getting close to the cigarette. It should not, just barely not touch it. You can adjust the lighter in and out by bending the wires there, and also the little peg can be moved back and forth. Let's load the second one. Okay. 12, the lighter turns on and the cigarette lights. At the end of the time it's in there, it'll take a puff for 2 seconds. See this goes on, it's taking a puff. It only puffs in the 12 o'clock position. So as the cigarette moves up again, there's 2 manual features on here. The cigarette lighter turns on for 2 cycles. So for the first 2 cycles around, the lighter will be on. You can also push the button here where it says on the soft key. You can turn on the manual puffing also manually. You wouldn't normally do that unless the cigarette didn't light somehow and you wanted to give it some extra help to light. Okay, so you go up there, the cigarette, turn the lighter turned on, you can take it off. So you notice when it puffs, the cigarette ember lights up. It should do that. Okay, once you stop it now. This is the puff pump back here. You can see when it turns on, the little piston turns up and down. The little piston turns up and down. This is the intake, and this is the exhaust. So the air comes in through here, comes out through here, and comes in and adds air into the side stream smoke. The side stream is collected by the hood here, and the hood, then as the smoke collects on the top of it and is pulled over into the mixing chamber. Okay, so the way to check the puff pump to see if it's operating correctly, you can do this actually while it's operating, if you do it in the right way. So hook this onto the puff pump, and then you can do manually, you can turn on the puff pump. So it should normally be around 2. It's a little bit low here. It's been operating for a while, so it needs to be cleaned again. Take this off and then hook the exhaust back up again. Ready? Alright, so the smoke then comes in, it gets burned on the tip, so that's the side stream smoke. The side stream smoke takes the air and collects it into the chimney here, and it's taken back into the mixing chamber. The mixing chamber swirls the air around and mixes it up nice with the air, and then it comes out the back and then is fed into the exposure chambers. The 3 switches here on top have no function at the present time. So this is the puff pump again and the lighter. Alright, so there is a little bit of a problem in this machine. When it first turns on, the number of cigarettes will be actually 1 less than what is actually going to be on there, unless it's 1. So if you turn it up and the number of cigarettes is 2, it's actually 3. So if you were to cycle all the way through and go back again to the number of cigarettes, if you did that when it first started up, it would show the proper number. At any rate, there's something wrong with that counter. It doesn't change the function at all. In fact, you know, if you burn 2 cigarettes all the time, you will never have to play around with this. It will just start up automatically and then start burning 2 cigarettes. Okay, you turn it on. In this configuration now, it's on the top. It's taking a puff every time it gets to 12 o'clock, and when it gets to 9 puffs, then it'll eject the cigarette out and then load another one in. Okay, so now that was 9 puffs. We'll come around and load up another cigarette. Goes to the bottom position, that one will be ejected, and the other one when the other one's lighted. And then we'll turn around and load another cigarette. Light it and puff it. Okay. These are the filters for making the TSP measurements. These are Paul Flex. You can get them through VCR. There's 2 sides to this. This is the side that the particles are collected on. The other side is looks like mesh. So the first thing you would do then is to record the weight. The record looks like 24.4 milligrams. And you're going to take this out then and put it into the filter holder for the in order to collect particles. So the filter holder, line this up here, the proper side up, and then put it on there, just finger tight. Okay. So this is the back of the TSP pump, the total suspended particulate. Total suspended particulate is the amount of material in the air usually measured inside there. It's a measure of concentration, usually in milligrams per cubic meter. So in order to get that measurement, let's plug in the TSP pump. This is the switch that turns it off and on. It's off now. This is the front of the machine. And there's a little timer right here. The timer should be set at H. It's set on minutes. So this is set for 5 minutes now. If you wanted to decrease the amount, then you increase and then decrease from back to 5. Okay, in order to take a sample, you would turn the machine on and then you push this button to start the sampling. Okay, so we've loaded a filter into this filter holder here. We want to then take a sample from the top chamber here. Operates the same as the last one. You push this little ring here, you take the tube out, and then this other tube is put in there for inline sampler. Okay, so now we're going. Okay, so that will give us the amount of particles, and we collect them on the filter. We can weigh that again, and that gives you the milligrams. In order to get the other part, you need to know how much air is passed through the filter. So this is the exit for the pump. This is a diaphragm pump. So it's a closed pump. Whatever comes in then goes out. And this then goes into the dry test meter here. Okay, so the line then is coming to the dry test meter here. The dry test meter measures the volume of air that passes through it. This you would record the reading on this meter. Presently 0.1430 cubic meters. Okay, so we recorded that. Now we'll turn on and sample for 5 minutes. Pushing this button. And we'll turn it on first. We'll turn it on from the back here. And then we can push the button and get it started. Okay, we'll get started. I'm going to sample for 5 minutes now. Okay, you'll notice when you're sampling, the air that's drawn through the filter will come into the room here, and you'll smell the smoke in the room. So if you want to get rid of that smell, you take another little tube and stick it into the hood here, so that the hood then pulls the air out. You actually put it over here. Take it up there. Okay, so we've taken a filter sample now, and you can see actually how much smoke is in there. We'll go over and weigh the particulate on this filter. Alright, this is the filter we collected smoke from. Okay, you can take this filter out of here. You can see there's quite a bit of material collected on there, so we'll weigh this filter and record that weight. Okay, now we're ready to calculate the concentration from those two numbers. Alright. Alright. Hold it up. Okay, so now we're ready to calculate the amount of material or the concentration in the chamber. So the dry test meter was before 0.143, and at the end it was 0.1956, which gives you 0.0526 cubic meters, or 52 liters. The filter weighed 24.4 at the start, and at the end weighed 28.5, which you collected 4.1 milligrams. You take the milligrams and divide the cubic meters, and you come up with 77.9 milligrams per cubic meter, and that is the TSP.
This portion of the video is to explain how to reassemble the unit after you've received it. You will have received it in several separate cartons. We want to point out the various fittings first so that you can use this as a reference. Note that each of the hoses are labeled to the specific points that they'll be hooked up when you reassemble the units. On the blower, there's a fan number 2, which goes to hood number 2. Each of the hoses are labeled to the appropriate fitting on the housing and on the hood. Fan number 1 goes to B7, which will be labeled. The hood mixing chamber hose goes into the 2 orifice meters fittings, each one having been labeled appropriately to match. They simply pop apart and are reassembled in the same way. To remove and to place the plastic fittings, you can pry them off with your hands and dismantle them in that way, and they're reassembled in the same way. Be sure when fitting them that all of the fittings are properly placed according to the index letters and numbers and are tightly in place. Note also that the orifice meter tubes have to be inserted in the correct location. Each one has been marked A2, A2, A1, A1, and the same with B. Okay. We're now going to remove the T-10 smoking machine and show you how to reassemble the one piece that has to be removed for shipping. Detach the tubing from the mixing chamber. Carefully lift the machine in and out. We're going to be removing the feeding tray by removing these 2 Phillips head screws. The screws will be replaced in those holes so that when you're ready to reattach it, it'll be easy to find.
Take out the cylinder too.
And again, when you're ready to reattach, this will be mounted from the rear, the screws going in from the front.
Nuclear scientist and is a national hero in Pakistan. To the U.S. and other Western nations, Khan is among the most infamous dealer in nuclear secrets in history. They say he sold blueprints and
You'll also find the fittings that you'll need for setting the machine up, including the power cord, additional tubing, and a regulator used for the TSP unit, the tool used for removing the tubing from the fittings, and other items.
Yeah, I forgot how to tell him that. Why don't you tell him how to do that?
Remove any extra cigarettes in the unit. This tool is used for removing the wheel for cleaning. There's a hole in the wheel. It gives access to the screw. Resuming again, we've inserted the tool into the hole in the wheel. Locate the place where the tool turns with some resistance, and then unscrew the screw that's holding it in place. The wheel will then come off, and you can clean behind it.
Take it off. Okay. Go ahead and take it off.
It's important after extensive use of several hours that this area here that's on the rear of the wheel be thoroughly cleaned. Methanol works well for the cleaning. To replace the wheel, there are additional washers in the drawer. When you're ready to replace them, when the cigarettes will no longer hold firmly in the hole, scrape these out very carefully with a razor blade. Use a drop or two of super glue and place new washers in each of the holes. Additional washers can be ordered from Teague Enterprises.
Okay.
While the wheel is off the shaft, it's important that you also clean the floating washer, which is located here. You can remove it with your fingers, being sure not to lose the spring. You can take it apart. Use a methanol-soaked Q-tip to thoroughly clean the washer inside and out. Clean the spring if necessary. Reassemble. And carefully. It's also necessary to clean the orifice where the puff takes place on the cigarette. By removing a small portion of the cotton from the cotton swab, it's possible to insert the methane-soaked cotton swab into the orifice as far as it'll go and clean any tar or buildup inside the orifice. We're now ready to replace the floating washer, slipping it over the puff pump shaft, gently putting it back into place, making sure that it operates freely. We're now ready to replace the wheel. We locate the hole which gives access to the screw. We slip the wheel back onto the shaft. Well, let's see.
Okay,
Are we gonna take the chimney off? This portion of the video, we're going to take the chimney off so that you can more easily reach portions of the machine for cleaning. There are 4 screws that hold the chimney onto the body. You should also remove the tubing that comes from the rear puff pump connection. With those 4 screws, note that 2 of those are longer, the ones that fit through the plastic on the right-hand side of the machine. With those 4 screws removed, simply lift off the chimney and set it aside. With the chimney removed, you can now easily see the floating washer that we removed earlier to clean, the wheel shaft, and also the lighter attachment screws. We've cleaned the floating washer and removed all of the debris from the inside and the outside of the machine, and that will give you a good opportunity to keep the machine clean. Now we're going to replace the wheel. We first slip it on the shaft, ensuring initially that it's pressed all the way up against the edge of the plastic. We then back it off approximately 1/2 the width of the tool or slightly more. Insert the tool back into the hole and gently tighten the screw. Over tightening it can distort the shaft. We then turn it with our hand to ensure that it's not binding. When you're satisfied that the wheel is properly attached, firmly attached, you're finished with that portion of the process. Under normal usage, the lighter element will last about a month. When the element no longer lights, or if it breaks, it will need to be replaced. Several additional lighter elements are provided with the machine and will be found in the ashtray drawer. The first step in removing the old element is to grasp the inner nut gently with a wrench or pliers and loosen the outer nut slightly, 1 or 2 turns. This will free the lighter element. Repeat the process with the upper. Then remove the lighter element and discard. When replacing the lighter element with a new item, notice that the 2 complete loops are mounted up towards the top of the machine. Loop the first hook and tighten finger tight, and the second tighten finger tight, and it may be necessary after tightening to adjust it further with your fingers. Don't over tighten those nuts. Then reposition the lighter element as necessary. And that completes the installation. We're now going to demonstrate how to properly adjust the spacing of the lighter element. After you've replaced the wheel, insert a cigarette into the wheel and rotate it so that it is directly opposite the puff orifice. You can then notice that the cigarette should be about 1/2 millimeter away from the wire element. If necessary, you can physically adjust the wire element either using the nuts or your fingers to ensure proper spacing. It's important to note that you should never cut the lighter element wire for any reason, as it's necessary that it remain its manufactured length. We're now ready to reassemble the chimney on the unit, but before doing so we want to be sure it's clean. Notice that there's buildup of tobacco smoke there, and it will get considerably worse in time. Spray the inside lightly. We recommend a good household cleaner. Clean all of the residue off the unit. If necessary, wash the interior of the hose and flush out the puff meter fitting, puff pump fitting. You're now ready to reassemble it. The 2 outside tabs against this wall of the machine, lining up the edges. Then the longer screws, which you pre-positioned in the hole, can be finger tight. That will help you align the other smaller screws. cautious not to over tighten the screws. And that completes reassembly of the unit. We're now going to remove the cigarette ram from the unit for shipping purposes. You'll receive it unassembled and you'll find it in the ashtray. The first thing we're going to do is remove the tubing from the ram by pushing in on the buttons. You'll notice that it's labeled B, and that tube will be placed back into B. Be sure that you press it in firmly so that it catches. We now remove tube A, and with our fingers simply unscrew the ram. Gently screw it in, snug, finger tight. Every day after using the machine, it's necessary to clean the puff pump. It's a simple process. It simply requires that you remove the tubing from the chimney inlet and the input for the pump. Carefully unplug the puff pump from the plug-in. With your fingers, lift the pump up out of the unit. Stamped into the plastic on the outer nipple is the word IN. You'll be using the transformer that's been provided. This end is plugged in to the power outlet, and this one into the puff pump. Taking a cloth, place it underneath the puff pump, the spray bottle, spray a small amount of methanol into the inside of the pump. It works best if you keep that covered, but I wanted you to be able to see what that looked like. Put a sufficient amount of methanol into the unit until the fluid is clear. You can then unplug it. It's important each time you've cleaned the puff pump to measure its output to be sure that it is appropriate. We're going to use the flow meter to do this. We'll attach the flow meter tube to the outer outlet of the pump. And once again, plug the pump in. And it should read at 2. If the pump does not read at 2, it would be necessary to adjust it. And this is done by using the small Allen wrench provided and tightening and loosening as necessary the 2 screws that are on each side. This is further described in the manual. The purpose of this segment is to demonstrate how to disassemble the fittings on the rear of the machine for packing and shipping. After reviewing this segment, you should be able to reassemble. Note that each of the fittings have been labeled to match the inputs for the rear of the machine. First, we'll remove the hoses. And the hood hose connectors.
Let go.
After removing the fittings. Remember to remove the hood air outlet. Then unscrew hood number 2. We'll next remove the gauge holder. First, disconnect the tubing by pressing down on the white button on the top and pulling gently. Each of the tubes have been labeled with the correct position in the orifice meters. We'll be providing you a bag with the hardware, and these items will be all packed in the chambers. We'll now remove the tubing. We're now ready to remove the tubes. Each tube has been marked on the PVC fitting with a corresponding letter and number. To help you remove the tubes, we've provided this strap tool. Place it over, tighten it, holding it tight. After loosening, it can be removed.
Okay.
We're now going to disassemble the hood for shipping. While watching this disassembly process, you should be able to reassemble it. We've labeled the chamber with the corresponding locations of the panels. We're going to be removing the mixing chamber from the unit for shipping also. First thing we're going to do is take the back off, which will be the last thing that you do for reassembly. Now we're going to remove the top. Set this aside. And we'll be removing these screws to release the chamber. When mounting the mixing chamber to the back panel, be sure that the arrows are pointed up on both locations, and then you can lay that on the back, matching the arrows both pointing up, locate the holes, and replace the screws.
Okay.
After identifying each of the panels in the correct orientation, it's best to have two people do this. hold the 4 panels together and then insert the screws in the matching holes. This is the best orientation to do that. Okay, this is the back panel removed from the hood. In order to ship it, we're going to make a cut right through the panel. It doesn't affect the efficiency of the machine, and we'll simply be replacing 2 panels on the back of the unit rather than the 1 panel.
We'll give you some tape.
We've now cut the rear of the hood in half for shipping and marked index marks in 2 places so that you can orient it for reassembly. After rebuilding the chamber, the hood, use the tape on both sides to seal the cut. I'm now going to talk about disassembling the unit of the 2 chambers. Note that the shelves are in place now. The shelves cannot be put into place or removed when the tubes are in place. The shelves have to be inserted and removed in that orientation. The 2 chambers are separated by vibration dampers that are attached to the chambers with nuts. The nuts are tightened with a 7/16 inch wrench and can be removed with the same. After having removed the 4 nuts from the vibration dampers, chamber A can be lifted off the chamber B. Here you can see the vibration dampers that will be placed back into the holes and reassembled. The first thing you'll want to do when assembling the chambers is place the casters back onto the bottom of chamber B. The holes for the 4 bolts will be evident